Love, live, life. Life can be glorious and hideous. Stick your feet to the ground, but don't think you are counted out. Don't let the wind pull you and tear you apart. Let yourself live freely and love, and you'll be happy. No limits. Just keep on.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another Iron Will podcast with me, Shane Warner, and
John Chase.
So what this podcast is all about is we are trying to get stories from people that have been through a traumatic experience in their lives and came out a different person.
Yeah, they have all created an iron will. So what is an iron will? A burning determination that cannot be stopped or hindered by anything, willing to do anything to get a desired outcome, extremely resilient. So what we like to say is just keep punching.
Yeah. So sit back and relax, and we're going to start the show. Today we have Paul McMahon. Well, how do you say your last name, Paul?
Yeah, it gets a little bit confusing because in the States it is McMahon.
Okay.
And in Ireland it's McMahon, but in Australia it's McMahon.
Okay. McMahon.
Okay, we got it.
Okay. So I want to start this podcast off by letting the people know about the Ask Iron Will podcast that we're doing, coming up on December 17th.
That's right.
And so my mom made an email address, and the email address is askironwill@gmail.com. And so if you have any questions for me and John, just go ahead and put them there, and they can be anything like...
Anything, you guys. It can be, because I love talking about fitness and nutrition.
Yep.
Health, supplements, whatever you guys want. We could talk about metaphysical. We could talk about relationships. We could talk about whatever.
Yeah.
You guys just ask us questions, get to know us a little bit more, because, this podcast is usually about other people.
Yeah.
And you don't get to hear as much of our stories.
Yep.
So,
like I said, today we have Paul McMahon.
That's right.
McMahon on the podcast with us, and I'm just gonna let him get into his story. He was a traumatic brain injury survivor. So,
right. Okay, take it away, man.
Excellent. So I've had actually quite a good recovery, I guess you could say. I had an accident back in 2014 where I fell 15 meters or 3.5 stories off a building. Now, yeah, pretty high, but I was lucky because I fell onto an awning 1 floor down, and then I fell through a tree. I think it's only slightly slowed me because I didn't really fall through big branches or anything. But it did help me a little bit to recover at quite a good pace.
How high up did you say you were?
15,
3 floors?
Yeah, 15 meters.
Okay.
So
that's 15 meters, yeah. So
what is that like? Well, it's not in the metric system.
Oh, sorry, I just
almost
realized
40 feet, something like that. Like, what is that like? Almost 40 feet, right? Something like that, like 30-something, 35 feet, something.
I'll tell you a secret about the rest of the world and measurements in the States. We all I know is that an inch is 2.5 centimeters.
Okay.
But basically 3.5 stories. Just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's super far.
That's about 35 feet, man. That's a good fall.
And so I think you're the furthest fall so far on that we've had on the podcast, because we've had a few podcasts where we talked to people that have fallen from like ladders and off of a escalator and stuff like that. But
should we ring a bell? Ding.
Yeah.
Winner.
So you're the furthest.
And it sounds like those branches really caught you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like they must have.
Yeah.
Oh man, you're lucky it wasn't worse than it was.
Yeah, no, I know, and that's why I also think that's why it's so important for me to tell my story, because look, brain injury and physical injuries as well, but all injuries, but especially brain injury, is so complicated that it is very different for everyone.
Yeah,
right. And of course, we all know that some injuries, or brain injuries, can be quite debilitating with a small fall, or they can be, I guess you can have success with a bigger fall or be in a car crash, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not as simple as, basically it's so that I hope people do listen to this podcast or read other things about brain injury and kind of say, you know what, I can get through this, like it's,
you always have you always have that option of getting up and fighting and working hard.
Yeah, exactly, and it works, I think.
Mm-hmm. So tell us how that happened. How did you fall? I mean, you were in the building, right? So what made you? No,
I wasn't. No, so I will tell. I guess the naughty side was that it was my birthday party.
Okay.
Again, I was quite lucky because of my age. I wasn't obviously 15, but I was 28.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was my 28th birthday, and basically we climbed out of a window and we were in a social area, but the social area was on a roof. There was no balcony railing.
Yeah.
So I took the wrong footing.
It doesn't sound very social.
Hey, let's all go climb out here.
It sounds dangerous.
But I think, yes. And so I think that's another thing also that while I've had quite a good recovery, I still think people need to, now I'm so careful. I would not be climbing out onto a roof through a window without a balcony railing. So I think be careful.
Yeah, for sure.
So can I ask you, were you drunk?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
well, just wondering. Yeah. Do you think that had anything to do with
last name?
Well, do you think that has anything to do with recovery? Because if your body is super relaxed when you hit the ground,
that's true,
or hit your head, it's more in a relaxed state, so nothing else tenses up.
Yeah.
Injuries are typically not as bad when you are under the influence or drunk. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, that's correct. So basically what happened, because my body wasn't reacting as, I guess if I'd fallen and I was normal, if not drunk, I would have tensed up constantly with every hit, I guess. Whereas the body just went drunk and floppy, which actually in a weird way helped me because I wasn't tensing up all the time as I crashed into things.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell us what happened next? Like, was the ambulance called or what?
Yeah, that was something. I mean, I guess I'm very lucky that I am here in Australia, because I don't know, like I travel a lot, and I don't know if, let's say, if I'd been in maybe one of the countries that I love to travel to, that I may not have got the same level of medical care.
Yeah,
sure. So the ambulance came within, very quickly. They were obviously worried at first. Then they did. I was in an, I think, induced coma for a couple of weeks, a few weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks. And then I do remember little memories during that period. So I do know that it was induced because I had, I guess, basically drugs, and people told me I was talking to them. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But during that period were all my surgeries. So I broke my femur, the big bone on the left leg. That was healed. My left arm as well. And so that was obviously, that was just the wrist. And what else? And then I just had, a lot of my other injuries was to do more with how would you say, tensed up muscle in my back and things like that, I found out about those issues later, not really during that first initial period. But yeah, that got me through. So thankfully they did good surgeries, and yeah, I'm very thankful that I was, in Australia, that I guess that care did exist and exists quickly, because in some countries, as I said, certainly it doesn't exist at that level, and I probably would not be here talking to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So did you have like a brain bleed or something like that in your head?
Yeah. So the thing is, my brain was scanned initially when I actually had the accident.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do feel personally that even though I just said about how great Australian medical care is, the psychological side I don't feel is done especially well, because I was only scanned once on the brain to look where the bleeding was on the left side where I fell. And then that was it. It only ever happened once, and I was never really, it just said, okay, he has a brain injury, no worries. There was some advice, but not much. So I really found that that's an area that I guess the medical world, at least here in Australia, needs to put more attention on.
Yeah,
I felt there was too much on my physical side. Yeah?
Yeah, well, especially since, like you were saying before, like every brain injury is different.
Exactly.
And so they should do more testing, you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. And also more testing in the sense of actually really discussing with you and analysing kind of where you were and where you're at. Like, for instance, I'd done a bachelor before the accident, and I remember when I did the neuropsychological test to go back to work, they didn't actually know my history at all. They just checked, okay, yep, he's this old and he has a bachelor degree, and then they did the assessment through that. Well, I don't think that kind of information tells you that my name's Paul and the Americans say McMahon.
Right.
It's more complicated than just some scans, if you get me, which they didn't do anyway.
Well, what we've learned already just from, I mean, like you even just sharing this and then listening to a lot of the other people that we've had on the podcast with brain injuries, we've had a lot. And it's probably the most common thing here. And yeah, you're right. Every time it's totally different. And sometimes it seems like the medical care was really efficient. And then other times it's like how you're saying, where they kind of miss some things. And there's gaps that are left open that people find out years later. And they're like, well, what about this?
Yeah.
And that can be pretty tough.
It's really unfortunate.
It is.
Yeah, and I think also in such a big way, again, talking of how lucky I am that I'm Australian, but it is the same with other developed countries that have a social system, that essentially if I've been debilitated where I couldn't walk, okay, then I definitely would have got sickness benefits and continuous medical care.
Right.
Because I had a brain injury, they just go, whatever, okay, release you from hospital, see you later. Nothing exists. There's no help,
So what did you start noticing other things later? I mean, like how you said it was 4 weeks that you were recovering from your other wounds, your other injuries. So after they sent you home, what else happened? How was your recovery?
I want to know first, like, sorry, but I want to know first if you being put into a medically induced coma, do you think that helped your brain injury situation out, or did they do that because of your brain injury situation?
Yeah, sure.
No, they did that simply because of all the surgeries.
Okay.
And just the physical side, they definitely didn't do it because of the brain side, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, as I was saying, I was talking to people where I don't remember. So I think I was really only definitely in a coma. I don't know, but I think for about a week or 2 weeks. It wasn't very long. So, I think that was more to just heal me in a physical sense.
Yeah, sure.
But then I was in hospital actually for 3 months in the rehabilitation ward, doing occupational therapy, doing speech therapy, because I had nerve damage. That's one thing I didn't mention. I had nerve damage on my face, facial nerve damage. And so, I was there 3 months. Then I left. I did what we call day hospital for 3 more months. And then I did that neuropsychological test, was cleared to work.